Welcome and good evening for those who are online and those who are in the sanctuary. This is yet another evening for Vespers, and I want to apologize for the little delay. We're just trying to get the technical and everything together. So I want to welcome all of you once again to this evening, and we're going to, the Health and Temperance of the church is going to present the Vespers. But first of all, I want to do a little short prayer before we get started. I want to invite Brother Gary. Is he here? Please come and do a short prayer for us. Brother Gary, please. Prayer.
Well, I'm so excited about tonight and Vespers, and we get to really ask some questions with some people that are knowledgeable. So I just want to have a little prayer and ask the Holy Spirit to be with us. Let's bow our heads. Dear Lord, what a beautiful Sabbath day you have given us today, and you have united your people to come together and just to celebrate the closing of another Sabbath day. Lord, we ask that the Holy Spirit will be here. We ask the pouring out. And Lord, tonight as we close out the Sabbath, we just glorify your name as we unite together. In your precious name, amen.
All right, thank you, Brother Gary. I want to invite Betty and Brother Warford to come and do a songs for us. We're going to have about 2 songs from the hymn now, then before we get started.
All right, good evening, everyone. Sister Betty chose 2 songs, and I don't know how she chose it, but the first song she chose, number 92, I think every Seventh-day Adventist should learn that song by heart, commit it to memory. Because at the time when this world is going mad, we ought to remember that this is our Father's world, no matter what happens, and He's in control. So we need not be fearful of anything we see happening, anything that seems to perturb us. So this afternoon we're going to sing number 92, This is My Father's World. And let us sing it with confidence, and we know that this is our Father's world. Let's sing. This is my Father's world, and to my listening ear, all nature sings and ring, music of the spheres. This is my Father's world. I rest in a tour of rocks and trees, of skies and seas, in the wondrous world. This is my Father's world. The bird that carols ring, the morning light, the lily white, declare the Maker's praise. This is my Father's world. He shines in all that's fair. In the rustling grass I hear Him pass. He speaks to me everywhere. This is my Father's world. Oh, let me never forget that though the road seems oh so strong, God is a ruler yet. This is my Father's world. Why should my heart be sad? The Lord is King, let heavens ring, the rest let earth be glad. Now that last stanza is something we should bear in mind. Say, this is my Father's world. Oh, let me ne'er forget that though the wrong seems oft so strong, God is the ruler yet.
So no matter what happens, let's keep our confidence in God.
Yes.
Next number.
321.
321. My Jesus, I love thee, I know thou art mine. For thee all the follies of sin I resign. My Jesus,
I love thee, I know thou art mine. For thee all the follies
of
sin I resign.
my
Gracious Redeemer,
my
Savior and love, ever I love thee,
my Jesus is none. Love thee because thou hast first loved me. And purchased my pardon on Calvary's tree. I love thee for wearing the thorns on thy brow. If ever I love thee, my Jesus is none. I love thee in life, I will love thee in death, and praise thee as long as thou lendest me bread, and say when the death dew has cooled on my brow, if ever I love thee, my Jesus is none. In mansions of glory and endless delight, I'll ever adore thee in mansions so bright. I'll sit with the glittering crown on my brow. If ever I love thee, my Jesus is
Thank you, Jesus. I love that song so much.
Thank you, Brother Warford. All right, we're going to go right ahead into the main thing why we're here this evening. I am going to introduce our presenters for this evening, and we're going to have a panel. We're going to sit down, get relaxed, and you'll be able to listen to the health thing that we're going to do tonight. So I want to, first of all, let me go up over here so that I make them comfortable. I'll be part of the table right here. So I want to call the first person who's going to be in the panel here. I want to invite Holek to come over here. Holek is a mental health, behavioral health nurse practitioner. She's been practicing for quite a long time. I don't know how many years, but she's got a lot of experience. You can see that, yeah, a lot of experience in that area. So she will be giving some of the highlights, and you're free to ask your question. So also I want to invite Dr. Pat. Dr. Pat Asil is a practitioner. He's a medical practitioner. Yeah, he specializes in intervention health and also preventative health. And for most of you are here, you know what a general practitioner is. He can see everybody in the family, the mother, the dad, and the children, everything. So he's very had a lot of experience in this area here. So we're going to have both of them here. And I want to also let you know that we're going to have question and answers when the time comes. So during that time, I'm going to have my helper to go around and give you the card so you can write your questions in. They will pick up your questions so that those questions can be addressed. And that will be after the presentation. So that's how we're going to do it. Also, we're going to have some gifts. We're going to ask you some questions after you've listened to the presentation. I have some gifts, very wonderful books and things to give you, keep in your library at home to be able to read, how to eat well, so that you'll be able to go home. So listen and pay attention attentively, because some of those questions will come from the presentation that's going to give tonight. So to start with, let me go ahead and give that over to Holette, who is going to start with whatever she has to let you know. Then we go over to Dr. Pat.
Sure. Hello. All right. So since I work in mental health and psychiatry, I thought part of what I would like to present would be depression and anxiety, which is quite prevalent in society. And so we'll go ahead and go into that. So as far as causes of depression, right, we think of like low mood, not having energy, don't want to do anything, sleeping all the time, or anxiety, just a lot of racing thoughts. We sort of, can get a sense of some of those symptoms. So factors, just sort of briefly going through it. I don't want to waste too much time here, but lifestyle, like not having enough exercise, just a healthy lifestyle, I think most of us knows about, like having a good sleep cycle, nutrition, exposure to toxins, social life, addiction, medical conditions, developmental history. So that would include like any trauma history in childhood, things like that, as well as genetics, right? So quickly going over, part of what I'll focus on is nutrition and how that might relate to anxiety and depression. And then I'll cover briefly on maybe some supplements that you can do, and then therapy models to treat depression and anxiety, okay? So important things would be like tryptophan, which is important in producing serotonin. Serotonin's a neurotransmitter that regulates our mood, right? So we think about depression, anxiety. We do get tryptophan from diets, but it is very important that we get enough of it. Omega-3, that's also very important. I'm just going to quickly, go over some of those, so you can just sort of think in your mind. Folic acid or folate. Vitamin B12, oftentimes we think of vitamin B12 as like, oh, anemia, if I don't have enough, or like vegetarians might have it, or vegans might have it. But meat eaters can also have low vitamin B12 for various reasons. But having low vitamin B12 can cause a lot of physical illnesses as well as mental issues as well, too. And then other medical conditions would be thyroid disorder. So if you have an hyperthyroidism, that can also cause anxiety in terms of psychiatric presentation. And then hypothyroidism, which is like your thyroid is underfunctioning, that can also cause depression and anxiety. In fact, 40% of individuals with hypothyroidism, if it's not treated, 40% of them will have depression, right? So they might go into like their psychiatrist or like to their therapist and like, oh, I'm so depressed, nothing is going well, like I'm doing everything I should. And they might be getting, like psychiatric medication, but not get any better because that wasn't the issue, right? It's like their thyroid isn't functioning. And so if we treat the actual cause of it, the depression would go away, right? And then vitamin D, which this was several years ago that I read, and I want to say about 90% or more or so of individuals in developed countries, including the United States, don't get enough vitamin D. And during the course of COVID, we might have heard of, vitamin D is important for our immune system, and you've got to get enough. But not having enough can actually also lead to mental issues, right? One snippet would be an individual that I know in his 30s, very healthy, but he worked indoors, right? And so he's like, I'm so tired, I feel like I have mental fog, I'm feeling sluggish and quite low mood, right? So he went to his doctor, and lo and behold, he had very simple low vitamin D, right? And so once he got on that supplement, like he felt immediately better, right? So these are things that we might not consider to be important, but they are quite important. And iron as well. Again, we think of like iron deficiency anemia, like I feel fatigue, you know, like physical manifestation, but there is a psychiatric presentation because you need iron to make dopamine, right, and other neurotransmitters. And so if you don't have enough dopamine, like, oh, I can't concentrate, I don't feel motivated to do things, and so people might think that they're depressed, or, you know, they themselves might think that they're depressed, or people might think, like, why aren't you like doing the things you're not doing, like you're just, you know, just sort of sitting there, or, you know, whatever, and you can't concentrate, and et cetera, all this stuff. But iron is also very important. Some of these labs, your doctors may not always consider. So, like even vitamin D, like where I work, like I and another psychiatrist, like we're really diligent about doing some of these labs, whereas other providers, they don't really, you know, consider it as much. So the more that you know about it, you can advocate yourself as well too, right? So again, quickly going over some over-the-counter supplements that you can take if you feel like you're dealing with depression and anxiety. So saffron, you guys might have heard of. It's the very expensive spice. It's more expensive than gold. It's that little flower, and you use is it the stamen or something? But this, the supplement, it's not necessarily from that, but they use the whole bulb and, you know, other stuff. But that's been shown to improve mood, even in comparison to like prescription antidepressants, right? And a lot less side effects than prescription medication. The other thing is lavender oil. Again, you know, you have it over the counter in terms of incense and essential oils, which like smelling it can help, you know, improve anxiety. But there's actually like ingestible form. There's two, like I believe there's Calmate and then there's Lavella. And in comparison again to like benzos, which are anti-anxiety medication, lavender oil, this one in particular, about 80 milligrams, I believe, reduces anxiety, you know, calms, decrease your heart rate, your blood pressure, some of those things, without the side effect of sedation, which a lot of anti-anxiety prescription medications have the side effect of causing sedation, right? Like you get tired, you get sleepy, but this one does not. And then the other one would be SAMe, which is also important in increasing neurotransmitters, as I said earlier, serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine. So again, comparable to like prescription antidepressants, but with a lot less side effects, right? So let's quickly going over to that. And then the other thing that I want to address is, how am I doing on time? Okay. The other thing is, like, you know, even our physical and our brain processes are functioning well, right? They can't account for free will, right? It's like, think of Adam and Eve. They were perfect. They were disease-free. You know, imagine like they're perfect created beings, but then there's that little pesky problem, quote unquote, of free will, right? And so this is a quote that I wanted to read from Romans 7:15-23. You can just hear the frustration here, right? It says, if you want to follow along, it is Romans 7:15-23. It says, "For what I am doing, I do not understand. For what I will to do, that I do not practice. But what I hate, that I do. If then I do what I will not to do, but I agree with the law that it is good, but now it is no longer I who do it, but sin that dwells in me. For I know that in me, that is in my flesh, nothing good dwells. For to will is present with me, but how to perform what is good I do not find. For the good that I will to do, I do not do, but the evil I will not to do, that I practice. Now if I do what I will not to do, that is no longer I who do it, but sin that dwells in me." So you can just hear like the frustration of like, I'm trying to do good, but I can't do it. I don't want to do it, but I keep doing what's like, you know, not good for me, right? And then it, like in the next several sentences, it says, and this is captivity to the law of sin, right? And sort of parallel to that, you can, or a comparison to that would be 2 Corinthians 4, 2 Corinthians 10, 4-5, it says, "For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty in God for pulling down strongholds, casting down arguments and every high thing that exists itself against the knowledge of God, bringing every thought into captivity to the obedience of God." So it's like we can either be captivity to Satan or sin, or captivity to God, right, through obedience. And I'll come back to the stronghold and how that relates to, again, mental health, right? So Jesus himself surrendered to the will of God, right? When he was praying in the garden, when his friends abandoned him, he said, "God, if this, Father, if this is your will, I'll accept it. But, but if I can evade it, I would love to. But if it's your will, I'll accept it," right? Again, surrendering his will to God. So how does that relate to mental health? There's a little concept called CBT, which stands for Cognitive Behavioral Therapy. Let me know if I'm talking too fast. So cognitive behavioral therapy is the idea that, we can pay attention to our cognitions, what we're thinking, and then thereby change our behaviors and how we feel, right? So, because most of us, we're like, I don't want to deal with feeling miserable. I don't want to deal with feeling sad. I hate that I'm, I'm angry all the time, or I hate that I can't do what I want to do. I hate that, I can't reach my goals. Why do I keep self-sabotaging, all these things, right? So let's figure out what's going on here, right? So it's bring attention to our thoughts and observe how these affects our emotions and behaviors. And by changing our thoughts, we can change our behaviors and our emotions, right? So, because thoughts creates feelings, and feelings then, sort of influence our behaviors, and our behaviors then reinforce our thoughts, right? So it's like this triangle that feeds into itself. So why is it important, right? So just sort of focusing on our thoughts. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it springs the issues of life." So in this case, guard your heart, keep your heart, meaning pay attention to your, what's going on in our heads. Ellen White wrote, 9 out of 10 diseases comes from our mind, right? So when I read that, I was like, wow, that's 90%, that's incredible, right? If you think of all the diseases in the world. But then as I thought about it, I was like, well, that's true. If we're not feeling well mentally, we don't live a good, healthy lifestyle. And that creates a lot of the physical issues that we face, right? So again, getting back to CBT, there's 2 additional concepts that I want to quickly present. It's called cognitive distortions and core beliefs, right? So core beliefs they can be good or unhealthy. It's good ones might be, oh, I am lovable, I'm worthy, right? They sort of help feed our confidence and our relationship with ourselves and with other people. But if they're unhealthy and untrue, it could be, I'm worthless, I'm unlovable, and most of the time we might not even recognize that those are our core beliefs, right? Unless we go into therapy and figure it out. Because let's say, for example, if someone says, I'm a failure, and if that's their core belief, right, then they might act in ways of trying to overcompensate by working too much, and that's going to create a lot of issues in their life. Or they might feel defeated and not do anything, so they will underperform at work, they might not go to school, they'll drop out, etc. All these stuff, right? So there's unhealthy ones and healthy ones, and part of, as I said, is identifying what are our core beliefs that's keeping us stuck, and then through our thoughts and our behaviors start to change them, right? And then their core beliefs are not just about us, but about other people and the world as well. So some unhealthy core beliefs would be, the world is dangerous. And so, they'll sort of be hyper vigilant and constantly think that people have bad intentions, about them, and be really, distressing, and that's gonna, distance them from other people, right? Or it could be, my family's trying to control me, or, certain things, right? And so even if you have the best intention, they'll perceive it as oh, they're trying to control me. And so there's that, it could be, cause a lot of it could cause a lot of rebellion and acting out, or et cetera, right? Anyway, so the second part that I wanted to discuss is cognitive distortion. So through these beliefs, we filter the world, right? Like we sort of view the world through these filters. And so we can start to identify like what are some ways that I'm distorting how I'm viewing this situation or people, right? And so there's a few listed distortions that we can recognize. Some of it might be like all or nothing thinking, like I'm a success or I'm a failure. There's no in between, right? It's like if I don't get 100% on that math test, I'm a failure. Like 99 is not good enough. I have to have 100, right? So these are like all or nothing thinking. Other things could be like catastrophizing, right? We're thinking of like the worst case scenario all the time, right? And that leads into anxiety and depression, right? So you sort of see, okay, like like once you identify like, okay, this is the pattern I'm engaging in, you recognize it and you're like, okay, I'm just engaging in distortion, which means that this is not true, right? You acknowledge that it's not true, and then from there you start to take control of your thoughts rather than your thoughts taking control of you, right? So those are some things that I just briefly want to share, but when you actually engage in like these type of therapy, it is a lot more intense and over the course of several weeks and not just in like 10 minutes. But I do wanted to present it because it's so important, and CBT is one of the most researched and evidence-based and effective intervention in terms of therapy, right? Because it's used even for like schizophrenia, not just depression and anxiety, right? So over to you, Dr. Pat.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm so impressed with the scholarly presentation. I'm going to probably simplify it even to the most simple thing so that everybody can understand. What do you think the reason why we are sick? Because of sin. Okay, that's one cause. But there's a lot of ramification of diseases that we have. And what are we doing right now? We have to do something so that we can at least prolong our lives with reduced suffering. So the first thing that I'm going to discuss is about nutrition. Nutrition can be a factor in why we get sick. If you have some pen or paper, take this down, write this down. Genesis 1:28 to 30. Take note of the first sentence there. And God said, okay, and God said. I want the rest, you can read it in the Bible, and what he's talking about actually is what is the food that we are going to eat. Fast forward 1,000 years later, in Leviticus 11, verse 1, it says again, and God said to Moses and Aaron, and he's still talking about food. He talked about food in the very beginning. He talked about food 1,000 years later. And this time, if you can read it, the first time God was talking about fruits and vegetables. Second, in Leviticus, it was talking about animal food. So animal meat was included in our diet. When we get to heaven, we will all be fruitarian. Have you read that? There is a tree of life that bears fruit of different fruit every month. So that's all we're going to eat. So we'll be fruitarian. Take note of that again. Okay, So the body needs food in order to sustain life. I think also that when we are young, we absorb, we assimilate food very well, so that when we get old, we notice that we cannot. So we have to change the diet anyway. We absorb very well, and then of course we have waste products. Babies, kids, they pee so many times a day. They pee the toxins, the waste product, and we poop also. They poop also maybe 2-3 times a day. But when we get old, we don't absorb very well, so we become malnourished. We don't excrete very well, so we become constipated, so we get sick as well. So there's something going on there in our bodies, and we have to know about that. So we should be aware that what kids can tolerate as they grow is different from when we get old. Let me give you an example. When I was maybe middle-aged, I can eat 16 ounces of steak, juicy steaks from Nebraska. Delicious. Now I can only eat about 5 ounces or less. Sometimes I have to cut the 5 ounces and take it home for my dog. If I eat too much, I'll have joint pains. Kids, give them as much as they can tolerate. They can do anything they want. It's just like also a car. You can drive 100 miles per hour, you end up in the police department or in the hospital. But as your car gets older, you cannot. But you can still drive it anyway. Anyway, in order for the food to be utilized, you have to exercise. You have to exercise. If you don't exercise, you don't promote circulation. And if you don't have good circulation, the blood becomes stagnant and you get sick again. And of course, in order for the food to be flowing, you need water. You need fluid. And if you don't drink enough fluid, the blood becomes stagnant. By the way, the blood is the one that brings nutrients to all parts of the body, the heart, all the vital organs, the brain, kidneys. And if you don't bring the oxygen, that food, nutrients into the organ, they will become weak. Our muscles become weak, our organs become weak. So we have to really get some form of exercise. Walking would be the best. And the water, if you don't have enough water, you don't excrete the toxins, you get sick. It's very important that you have to drink enough water. When you, they say 8 to 10 ounces a day. That would be too much for some people, but it's not much for some. But your guide should be estimate how much you pee and then drink right away. Replace it right away. That's the best way to gauge it. If you pee maybe half a glass, you can do more than half a glass. So if you pee 3 times a day only, you don't have to drink too much because you didn't, only through respiration and through your breathing. And then after the water, let me see if I can get my notes together here. Okay. So you have nutrition, you have exercise, you have water. You need the sunshine. Sunshine, but we don't have sunshine all year long. We have winter, like now, winter months. When do people get more sick, winter or during the summer? It's winter. It's winter because we don't get the sun. We don't get the enough water because we're cold. Sometimes we just drink hot chocolate and all the stuff. And we don't drink water. We don't have enough. Our circulation gets stagnant. So it's very important to get the vitamin D from the sun. And also, let me tell you also that people get sick because vitamin D is a nutrient that boosts your immune system. You want your immune system to be high, to resist the disease that we get during the winter months. Have you seen a deer get sick of the flu and cough and all the stuff? No. And nowadays, more than 50% of the world population are very low in vitamin D. It's because we're indoors playing with our computer, watching TV, and we do most of the things, the exercises indoors. So we don't get the sun. We get more sick. Next is air. We need air, oxygen. What do we do in the winter? We close our windows because it's cold. And we use our jacket when we go outside. We don't get the sun. So every now and then, of course, you can go to your balcony or by your front door and do some exercise. Or there's another thing very important. Do you know what is a snake plant? A snake plant is a plant that usually grows very well in the summer, but likes to be indoors in the winter. But it releases a lot of oxygen. So every house should have a snake plant. If you don't know our snake plant, you can Google it and see that it's a very common plant. You even ignore it. Many people ignore it. They don't know about it. But it's the plant that releases the most oxygen as compared to other plants. So not only does it helps with the immune system, it also helps you absorb calcium, and like other diseases, it helps in the management of diabetes as well. So this is very important. So oxygen, we have oxygen. In the winter, we have less oxygen. We congregate indoors, so the level of oxygen also drops. What happens to a candle when you cover it with a ball or something? Yeah, it needs also. It's just like us. It will die, and we need that oxygen for our brain. That's why we feel sleepy in the winter, because we don't have enough oxygen. The next one is temperance. Temperance in everything, especially in eating. Of course, if you know what you're eating, you shouldn't. Some people say, it's hard because after eating, I feel so sleepy. I want to. Yeah, it's basically the sugar. If you eat a lot of carbohydrates with sugar, it's slow down your circulation. It gels up your blood. Sugar is 8 times as addictive as cocaine. So you want to eat and eat and eat. The advantage of not being a vegetarian, like for example, if you're a meat eater, it is something that helps circulation too, because it doesn't cause too much inflammation. There's a certain substance there, omega-6. Omega-6 in beans is higher than, or specifically the oil in canola oil, peanut oil, and other vegetable oil has more omega-6, which can inflame your blood vessels and cause your blood to be stagnant or slow down. So avoid those oil from beans or grains. The best oils will be avocado oil, olive oil, fish oil, and coconut oil. So this is very important. It also helps, of course. You have to have a good balance between the omega-6 and the omega-3. By the way, a lot of chicken and those who eat pork, they feed them with grains, which has a high in omega-6. So when they eat these white meat as compared to the red meat, of course the cows now are fed with grains as well. So the omega-6 is going up. But normally the red meat has a lower omega-6, which causes inflammation. When your blood vessels is inflamed, the whole of your blood vessels becomes smaller too. So your blood pressure goes up. So many things. And I'm not saying that vegetables are bad, but there's another thing, substance that they produce, lectin. Lectin is a substance, a protein that protect the plants from being eaten. They don't like to be eaten as well. So they produce that. So we call them allergenic reaction, and it causes inflammation in the gut, and you have the leaky gut syndrome, you have some belly aches, and remember also that I'm telling you this because people have different bodies. I can tolerate eggs, I can eat 2 to 3 eggs a day. Some are allergic to eggs, they can die. Some are allergic to peanuts. I'm not allergic to peanut, and I've seen patients in the emergency room with cannot breathe because their throat is swollen. Specifically, this what do you call this? Shellfish. You know, the ocean fish. The bottom feeders. Yeah, the bottom feeders. They are full of, because they're scavengers, bottom feeders. They eat all the waste product that's coming from up there, crabs and shrimps and all this bottom feeders. They eat, and of course, when they eat them, it's on their flesh. It may be delicious, but I've seen there are more people are allergic to this seafood than being allergic to the meat from fish that's swimming above them. And also, there are more people who are allergic to greens. So be careful. Not because you are a vegetarian. It can give you some problem with the lectins. The lectins are inflammatory thing. Omega-6 in a lot of food. The ratio should be about 4 omega-6 as to 1 omega-3. Omega-3 mostly from fish. If you go up, it can kill you because of the omega-6. If you up it to more than 4, it could cause chronic inflammation. It gives you a problem. Omega-3, nothing. Whether you go up or down, down is bad with omega-3. But omega-6, whether you go up or you go down, it's bad. So you have to maintain a good ratio of these two very important things, because it's a cardiovascular, it has a cardiovascular effect, negative effect if you have too much of that. And the next one is rest. You have to have rest. When I say rest, sleep. Sabbath is one. When you are resting, when you are having a good sleep, that's the time your body is going to collect the garbage. So if it's going to collect the garbage, what's the color of your pee in the morning? It's more concentrated. So your body has used up a lot of water, so the best thing that you do in the morning is drink a glass of water. And in the evening, you can do that too. I read a book which says if you drink a glass of water and you are at high risk for having a heart attack, you will reduce your risk of having a heart attack in your sleep. Heart attacks and stroke usually comes between 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock in the morning. So if you eat breakfast in the morning, you haven't drank some water yet, your blood is thick, and you eat that bacon and fried eggs, whoa. You can be calling 911 before 9 o'clock in the morning, because it does. And some wake up trying to drink water in the morning, and one side of their face is already paralyzed because it's clogged up. Keep that blood flowing all the time. You should have sufficient water. You should have a good heart, because when you're sleeping, your heart slows down too, wants to rest. And if your body is using up all the water, your blood becomes thick. Recuperation. And the last of this general topic is trust and connection. Trust in God, connection with God, connection with our fellow human being. As we get older, we isolate ourselves, we become lonely. But if you come to church regularly, or you call friends and you get connected again, there's a reason for us to live. So these are some of the things, highlights of what we need to do in order to live longer, more comfortable. Some say, live long and die quick. Live up to 120. The possible lifespan of man now is about 120. But because of the disobedience, the sin that we commit, we don't have connection anymore with. Because when we have connection with God, we think about the sunshine, the air that He gives us for free, and not just the medication that we go that buy and gives us temporary relief. So if you have any questions, let us answer them the best we can.
Well, thank you very much, I want to thank the presenters for a wonderful job done, and you've had a whole lot of stuff. I don't know, I had learned a lot myself. I used to drink about 2 cups of water in the morning when I get up, but I didn't know that that's a whole lot. I didn't know the health benefit much more than what I've known tonight. Also, in the evening, but I worry about Dr. Pat. If I have to drink before I go to bed, I might have to get up several times a night to go and pee. Based on so that worries me to be drinking that.
I see our pastor have a big jar of water. I don't know how he does that, but as we get older, we develop, male especially, have prostate problems, and then women, they have a weakening of their bladder muscles. So it would be nice to probably drink a lot more during the day, and before we go to bed, probably we don't have to if we have been. And the first thing in the morning, because we already have it. Yeah. And it is very uncomfortable, and of course not very good if we wake up 3-4 times at night to go pee and disrupts our sleep. Sleep is very good. An adult, grown-up adult should sleep 7 hours. If you go 8 hours or so, you'll find out you can develop headache. And if you have a headache, that may be a sign of lack of water. So what you need to do is, before you even take that Tylenol, try to drink 2 glasses of warm water. Why warm? Because if you drink cold water, you might have a spasm here and it's hard to swallow. But if you go with the warm water, it will just go straight. And if you get tired of water, squeeze some lemon there, and it helps as well. But yeah, it's a problem. And if you don't get enough sleep, you can develop hypertension. It's something that we'll have to talk with our doctor, because there's so many things. But I'm on the nutrition side, preventative measures, and there are some pills that helps. By the way, there's a hormone also that we produce as we get old. There's some we overproduce, and there are some chemicals also that we produce less. Like, for example, we cannot sleep because the melatonin that the body produces naturally, we don't produce much. That's why older people cannot sleep. So we can take supplements, melatonin. The body usually produces melatonin 8-9 in the evening, and that should last till the morning. And melatonin, of course, if we don't get enough sleep, you cannot clean up your body, and that will shorten our lives, right? Yeah, it shortens our life because we're moving around with a lot of toxic waste.
Thank you. I know you are writing your questions down. Chimak, if you could help me collect the questions so that we can go ahead. While you're writing your questions down, I want to ask Oleg, there was one thing that I've heard you spoke about isolation. And Dr. Pat also talked about that in terms of depression and anxiety. We have a population, aging population in our church family here. And this is something that's very important as people get older. And a lot of things they do to enjoy life, they don't do it anymore. They don't go to work. They don't get to do a lot of jogging and do those kind of things. Are there any suggestions, something you would suggest for our church members, especially those of us who are getting a little older, that we can do an alternative to just going to get a medication from the doctor?
As far as connection, I think that's important across the lifespan. I think there's different challenges in each developmental stage, but important regardless, right? So when we're younger, we might have the energy to go out and do things, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we have an authentic emotional connection, right? Like someone can have like a lot of friends involved in a lot of things, but if you don't have a genuine connection, there's still going to be that inner loneliness, right? And so it'll be the same as if like you're by yourself, right? And so, and I think so for the young, so I just wanted to sort of like make mention of that. And then for the older population, or whoever it might be, I think that the important thing is, as individuals, we owe it to ourselves to involve ourselves in community settings or reach out to people, right? Sometimes we might, feel discouraged and wait for other people to invite us, but in reality, it's sort of like, well, if you want something, we have to go out and do it, right? And so if an organization isn't already set up, just sort of inviting, friends or, whoever it might be, like church members or even neighbors to, share dinner or lunch or certain things. There are, as far as like community support, certain towns or cities might have senior centers that older individuals can get involved in. They have like games and entertainments and form friendships, things like that. As far as like what we can do as a church community, I think is just doing what we would do for other people, just sort of like being aware of our surroundings and seeing if anyone needs that help. I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah.
A lot of help. Thank you.
In addition to that, vitamin D again. If you lack vitamin D, you tend to be sad, especially in the winter. Seasonal affective disorder. During the winter months, northern people from Canada or United States, they go down south to Miami to have the sun, and they feel better than just staying at home looking at the snow from their windows. So it's very important that you have some little sunshine, get some vitamin D supplements, and of course, like what was said, you have to be in contact, in connection with your friends. Yeah. There may be some sad friends, but most of the time they'll always ask you, "How are you doing?" And you feel good because somebody asked you that. Well, everybody gets old. Everybody, except children, continues to have that melatonin to help us sleep. And if you didn't get enough sleep, you'll be cranky in the morning. And nobody wants to talk to you, and you get isolated. There's a question here. If soy milk supplement impact thyroid hormone production, what should you do when it helps with improving hot flashes? Okay. Soybean is very bad nowadays. Soybean because of the GMO. 90% of the soybeans are GMO, and because of the high phytoestrogen, phyto means plant, phytoestrogen is plant estrogen, and it is already adulterated, it is altered, in other words. It could be dangerous, it could affect your thyroid, because it's also a hormone-like substance. And the best form of soy product will be the fermented, so it could be the tofu or miso. But the edamame and the fresh, not fermented, may cost too much of it. And it has also high in omega-6, so it can cause inflammation. So I hope that will answer this. And what are your thoughts of intermittent fasting? Yeah, in the Bible, they fast. Intermittent fasting, gives your body chance to rest, and it can recycle some waste products too into good ones. So it is a good way of cleansing as well. But don't forget the water again, because a lot of times people who don't drink during fasting, you can see the plaques in the tongue. So in other words, the body is pushing it into the tongue so that when you swallow, you can swallow some of the toxin that gets out of the other end. So fasting is very important. It's strengthened. Yeah, it's a cleansing thing to do. But don't forget the water. Can tea drinking be a replacement for water? If it has caffeine, be careful of that, because green tea is okay. Because the caffeine can affect the heart of some people. It can make them nervous, and that can be not so good to the health. Sometimes you palpitate. Just like coffee, some people just are so sensitive with the caffeine. The green tea, most of the time, doesn't have caffeine at all. My favorite tea is the lemongrass. I plant them. I have some lemongrass and just get a blade, cut them in small pieces, pour some boiling water. In about 5 minutes, I have a good cleansing tea. Anything else?
Just to add to Dr. Pat's question about the intermittent fasting, a few years ago, I think it became like sort of this trend, and I remember thinking, oh, it's one of those like fads, probably not, a good thing. But then once I looked into it, I was like, whoa, this is actually, this makes sense. And as Dr. Pat mentioned earlier, part of that detoxification is if we constantly eat, right? It's like our bodies, sort of having to use its resources to, sort of digest, and it becomes taxed, right? So when we let that rest, it's able to do the other functions, the detoxification processes that it needs to do. I've seen some recommendations where they'll say, it's healthy for generally, not for everyone, but like generally to eat 2 meals a day, right? About 6 hours apart, I believe. And I, over the summer, I was like, oh, maybe I should try fasting for supper, right? Because people are able to go through like just 2 big meals a day, breakfast definitely, and then lunch, and then skipping supper. I was like, oh, I like food too much. But the compromise that could be done is eating really small meals, right? So it could even be like not a meal, but more so like a snack, or like 2 cups of smoothies, or just fruits, things to sort of fill you up, but not necessarily like make you full and, groggy, sort of like as if you're eating a huge meal, right? And I think that's a healthy compromise. And then talk in the question about the seasonal affective disorder, especially during winter months, that's definitely the case. If you don't want to do prescription, there's a thing called blue light therapy that you could do. There's a few machines that's in the market of various prices, like from $30 to like $300. But I think the recommendation's about 20 minutes to 30 minutes in the morning, first thing you wake up. That helps to reduce symptoms of depression, as well as make you feel more alert and energize you, right? So even if you don't have like that depressive symptoms, like that clinical depression, I think it's still beneficial for all of us, to wake up and, have, sunlight when you're, just going outdoors or opening our windows, rather than staying in this sort of like, darkened room. Just sort of, the principle in terms of health that I like to keep in mind is how did God design us to live, right? He didn't design us to live in a cave, with no sunlight. Like, he designed us to have cycles and order, wake up in the morning with the sunlight, and, sleep when it's nighttime, and rest, and, engage in nature and some of those things. And so I think even if we don't necessarily know everything or like the science behind it, just sort of following those general principles, I think it helps us guide or like informs what God wants for us and what's healthy for us. So, question about this: do you recommend brain stimulation therapy for depression? And I'm assuming this is asking about like electrical type of intervention. There's a lot of good research behind it, but I don't have any personal experience with it, so I can't speak to it on a first person, sort of like from my own experience. But there's a lot of interest in it, and people who've gotten it have had success with it, but it is usually sort of as a last resort intervention, right? Because there's a lot of side effects that comes with it too. So you want to try things that are less invasive generally, and then if those don't work, then you might consider things like that. And then the second question is, do you have any recommendation? Oh, family med too. To help with the weight loss, can lack of sleep cause weight gain? Second question, yes, lack of sleep can cause weight gain, definitely. And then recommendation to help with weight loss, I'll sort of, and then Dr. Pat, I'm sure, has a lot to add to that. There's a few supplements that you can try that is safe. It's the saffron that I actually mentioned earlier. It's helpful for, as I said, depression and things, but it can also reduce cravings, and so it can help with weight loss if the weight loss causes from like overeating and having a lot of cravings, and of course like the other healthy lifestyle that we mentioned previously. And then the other thing that I would say is finding out why you're gaining weight. If it's a medical issue, let's say like for instance thyroid, then it's like, okay, there's a medical issue why we're not able to lose weight, why we're keeping, why we're putting on this weight, and then just sort of going from there too.
Thank you.
Going back to that soy milk thing, I missed something here about improving hot flushes. There is a tea, black cohosh. You can use that. It's my concern actually on the soy is a very good. The Chinese use it, but of course they plant in the high mountains. And they have good, nice, unadulterated soybean plants. So the black cohosh, you can buy that over the counter or order it from Amazon. Weight loss. There's a hormone in the body that's not balanced, but of course, in order to address this, we have to check the thyroid, check all the blood work before we even think about the hormone, because the test for this hormone is very expensive. But first, the problem is there, but it's usually aggravated by artificial sugar, food enhancer, behavior problems, that kind of thing. The first step that I would is regulate the calories. The carbohydrates, for example, is very bad because it turns into sugar. And the artificial sweeteners will enhance your craving. So if you have enhanced craving, you are enhancing also the cause of your overeating or over-ingesting too much caloric food. There are some theories about being a vegan and a carnivorous person. You can see that I've seen a lot of vegan who are obese as well. And if they try without eating sugar, without eating carbs, just vegetables and meat, they lose weight But be careful again. A warning here is the animals that are slaughtered are fed with grains, which of course, if it's grains, there's a lot of hidden carbohydrates in the muscle of the animal that's being butchered. So this goes into a long discussion in order to be successful. Some who cannot tolerate all the procedures, usually if they have the money, they go for surgery, but that's not still, because a lot of people who I have at least 3 who I referred because they don't want to do this, they don't want to do that. It's true, but they ended up being malnourished, and they're more prone to cancer.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Before we go into, I don't know if anyone has any other questions from the audience, or you have one more.
So this says, what does it mean to be connected? And I think this is a really, really good question. I think maybe we can, if we frame it in a way, we think about intimacy, right? So when we think about intimacy or like communication, there's different levels of communications. Like we can talk about like information as if we're in school. Like we talk about facts, like, oh, you know, in a family might be, oh, when's the doctor's appointment? You know, when's the school assignments due? And when I'm going to go to, you know, like California tomorrow. Like just sort of like facts, right? Like nothing really personal. It doesn't really say anything about us. And then there's, you know, levels of that. And then when we actually get to a more a genuine connection or like a deeper intimacy, it takes vulnerability, right? It's like communicating to the other person, disclosing to the other person things that we might not, you know, feel very secure about, or things that worries us, or, you know, what you know, like what our hopes and dreams are, right? Being able to share some of those things. And I think connection requires, as I said earlier, that vulnerability. How I like to think of it is like, consider like celebrities, right? We know things about them. We know what they're doing, what they like, what they wear, and all of those stuff. And so we feel like we know them, right? And so they might even have like, you know, fanatic fans that, you know, like stalks them, or like they meet the celebrities and they're like, oh, I love you, and I da-da-da, and the celebrity's like, I don't know you, right? And so like, because if we know something about someone, we feel more connected to them, right? But if we don't reciprocate that, there isn't really that relationship, right? So in order to be connected, we have to allow ourselves to be vulnerable, right? So I think that's really important. And for some people, that vulnerability doesn't come naturally, and it could be because they were hurt in the past, or that just wasn't, you know, part of their upbringing in their family, right? I think for some, there's a sense of, well, if we're thinking about it like a church term, like, right? There's like legalism and, you know, that other aspect. So it could be like, oh, we have to do things the right way. But if there's not that emotional connection, family members, like they might look good on the outside, right? Together, and they, you know, do things together, and they talk. But then when you actually really look into like the conversation, it's like no one's really talking about things that like, no one's really talking about like what their dreams are, or like one person could be sharing it, but the other one might just be like withholding, right? Putting on a lot of walls. And so, yeah, I think that makes sense.
Thank you. We're going to try to wrap up so that we'll be very respectful of everybody's time. Our intention is to close really by 7:30. We're just a couple of minutes away. But I want to ask, we have a lot of gifts here to give. I want to ask a few questions from the presentation. Number one would be, what is the percentage, and this is exactly what the presenter said here. So what is the recommended percentage of omega-6 to omega-3? Okay, hold on. Somebody, who's the first person to raise their hand? Okay. Let me give you, I'm sorry about that. Okay, you can, sure, okay, sure, you got it. 41 correct. All right, you got a gift right here. And this book is Food and Their Healing Power. So this is, you get to read about this and be able to know about all these different types of food and their healing power. Thank you, ma'am. Now, the next question I wanted to ask here would be, all right, what is CBT? Anybody can? I saw a hand, the first hand I saw at the back over there. CBT. You got it. All right. And this is food that heals. Thank you, man. Be careful. Food that heals. Another question will be here. Let me see my notes right here. Now, if oxygen, what happens if the oxygen level in the body drops? Let me go back again. What happens if the oxygen level in the body drops? Yes, ma'am?
The blood slows down and gels.
Is it true?
Kind of sticky, groggy.
Let's put it this way. If a patient is brought to the hospital semi-conscious, what's the first thing that they put? Oxygen, right? Yeah, because oxygen is the main thing that causes body cells and tissues to move and function very well. By the way, on that omega 6, the ratio, there's a lot of omega 6 that, in fact, the average American now has a 15-to-1 ratio. Too much omega 6, and that's why there's a lot of people who are sick.
So should we give her the prize? Okay. Somebody said yes.
Yeah, those are the two significant omega fatty acid. In fact, omega 3 from fish oil is better than aspirin. Some people are taking aspirin. It helps keep the blood flow, but the aspirin keeps the blood from clotting. So it's better to. And of course, it causes bleeding, that aspirin. Omega 3 from fish doesn't.
All right, another question. The presenter did mention that sugar is dash times as addictive as cocaine. At the back over there. She raised her hand first. How many times? Not exactly. Next over here. 8 times. All right, you got the, you're almost there. Thank you. 2 more questions to go. There are 2 causes of depression. The presenter had mentioned today. 2 causes of depression she mentioned today. Who will give me the answer to those? Go ahead, Emma.
Low vitamin D and low B12.
I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, you got it. All right, this is more choices. Eat well, live well. More choices. Eat well, live well. Thank you, ma'am.
Since we're talking about vitamin D, I think that's our superstar today. So when you look at vitamin D, most lab ranges will say 30 to 100 is normal, right? And so when you, like most of my patients, most of them are below 30, and then a few might be a little bit over 30, right? And so you're like, oh, okay, you're under, within the normal lab range, sure. But ideally, I believe what we want is anywhere from 75 and above, and if there's anything different, yeah. So when you do get your vitamin D level checked, you might not see that little, red saying that you're below, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're at a healthy, optimal level. So just something to keep in mind.
Thank you. And this is the last and final question. The final question. Let me see my notes right here. Exercise promotes dash. Fill in the gap. Exercise promotes dash. Just promotes what? Circulation, that's correct. So you want this. Food. Who get one? Oh, you got one already? All right. You want us to give to someone else? Okay. Thank you. Be careful. Watch over there. All right. I think we have come to. Does anyone have any question? Any question? The question at the back.
Is it bad to eat once a day?
It would be better for twice a day is good, but once a day, that's too much fasting. And if you maybe if your work is sedentary, probably, but don't forget the water, of course. Yeah, there's nothing wrong eating once a day. But it would be better to divide it at least into two. Give your body time, your stomach time to rest and circulate. And okay.
We have a hand up over there.
Yes, there was no discussion about stress and its effects on the body and the hormones, and if there are ways to, whether it be natural supplements to bring down your stress. And I understand following the laws of health, et cetera, but when there's stress that can cause weight gain, that can cause the cortisol, what are some things that you can do to reduce the cortisol other than reduce the stress?
Sure. So since you asked about supplement, there is a supplement called ashwagandha. I've seen it at Costco in the past couple of years too. That's known to reduce cortisol level. So that's one thing. And then, as you said, lifestyle, I think we all sort of know already. Yeah. I think in terms of, lifestyle in general, certain things that we might not pay attention to would be like music and just sort of learning new things that keeps our mind engaged and healthy. So not only does it improve like our mood and our confidence level, our competency and our level of confidence, but it does help in terms of reducing stress. Like it's a healthy distraction. Like we think of like, oh, I need to reduce my stress and I need to distract myself from whatever thing. But when we look at the world, it's like anything could be a distraction, and most of the times we're more attracted to unhealthy distractions. And so I think we sort of have to like be really mindful and judicious about what we're picking as our stress relievers, and not it be something that can turn into like an unhealthy addiction later.
As I mentioned, exercise is also a stress reliever. When you're mad, your cortisol goes up. When you drink too much Coke, Pepsi, or caffeinated drinks, it adds to your stress. When you don't sleep, your blood pressure is going to go up. When you're not sleeping because you're busy thinking of maybe counting your money. Lack of sleep is also a form of stress. And if it continues, it will go into anxiety, and then it goes into depression. So it's a very thing that you need to watch, that stress, because kids do not have stress. They don't have high blood pressure. But when they start getting responsibilities, that's when the stress comes. And if they cannot handle the stress, they go into drugs, drinking, and all destructive behaviors.
Thank you. Yeah, I've learned that many of us who are very involved, engaged in daily activities, you could also sometimes you could also do workout. Go to the beach and go to the mall, or just try to take a stroll. And also, I think the dogs and some of your pets also reduce the stress. Those are very helpful. But above all, what I've had tonight is that we have to have a good relationship with our God, be very prayerful. And even we do all these things, we have to trust God, and He'll be the one who will be able to take care of all this. So I think at this point, I want to thank our presenters for all the wonderful job they have done.
And don't forget to laugh.
So I want to ask Dr. Park to close us in prayer while we stand up.
Heavenly Father, we're so thankful for the close of another week. And as we start this new week, will Thou help us to walk within wisdom and health, and enjoy the blessings that You are giving to us each day. Heavenly Father, bind us with one accord of love. So help us and look for the second coming, where we can be with Thee forever, where there will be no more disease, but happiness forevermore. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.